Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time today. We have a very inspirational show coming right up. Our first guest is JJ Flizanes, and she is the health and fitness guru. She's here today to talk to us about how to have lasting weight loss and ditch the diet. Now, JJ is an empowerment strategist, director of Invisible Fitness, author and show host of Fit to Love. JJ has been named Best Personal Trainer in Los Angeles by Elite Traveler magazine, and since then has been featured in many national magazines as well as appearing on NBC, CBS, Fox 11, and KTLA. So let's welcome to the show, JJ.
Thanks, Marianne. I'm really excited to be here.
Hey, it's such a treat to have you here. You are just like the guru when it comes to getting fit and getting in shape. So I was so thrilled to hear that you have a new book.
I do, and what's really fun about it is it's not just sort of the standard run-of-the-mill fitness book. It's a mind, body, soul approach to fitness because I've been a personal trainer for 20 years. And over the 20 years, take a step back and look at what actually works for people long-term versus short-term. I've come up with 5 secrets, and that's what the book was centered around.
Well, and so you do things, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you do things completely different than what's considered like the norm in weight loss programs or, going through like a weight loss regimen. And so why don't you share with us a little bit of what makes your approach so different, and then what inspired you to, write this book and to develop this approach?
It's funny to hear someone else say you do things so differently because I really do, and I don't ever think about it like that. I mean, it's very simple. I do things very differently. I've got a current client who has had 8 other trainers before me, and part of why she's changed is she's been with a trainer for a long time because of the accountability and the education and the support. And over the years, people have moved or she's moved, so that's partly why she's had 9 trainers. But she came to me because she wasn't getting the results that she wanted, and the trainer she had prior to me didn't have nutrition education and sort of that holistic approach. But she really wanted to become leaner and build more muscle and increase her metabolism because she just turned 60. And what I found really interesting that just continues to reaffirm that I am so different is that what I asked her to do, like connect her brain to her body and utilize her muscles by using her brain. And again, it's something that unfortunately I can't really have you think about. You have to see it or do it to really get the concept, but it was something brand new for her. And then all of the different motions and exercises were all new. So if you think about that, that's someone who's been with a trainer for 15 years, and I'm doing things that are brand new. And that just really, I'm like, what are people doing out there? I do know. I was actually director of education for New York Sports Club. I taught hundreds of trainers. I do know what they're doing out there. But what continues to floor me is my thirst for education and knowledge and to ask why and to really understand things on every level to be the best possible teacher and coach I can be is the lack of that in other people, and how we still are carrying beliefs and ideas about weight loss and fitness around that we've carried for a long time, and we have yet to ask the real question. So this book is, again, 20 years of experience as a personal trainer and being able to, I've always dug deeper from the get-go, and that just means on every level when it comes to the science, I dug deeper because I wasn't considered in my mind. I mean, I got good grades in school, but I didn't think I was a brainiac. I definitely did not get math and science like the elite did. And I therefore then decided that I wasn't that smart if I wasn't getting math and science so easily, and I wasn't excited about it until I became a trainer. And then when I became a trainer, science excited me. I understood it because I saw it. And now it made sense. And I learned, and I learned more and more because personal training is a combination of so many sciences. And what most people don't realize is that your trainer, and this is no disrespect, I don't know your trainer or if you have one, but most trainers get a weekend certification course and hit the ground running. Some of them don't even have to step foot in a gym or work with a body to become a certified personal trainer. And most people don't really know that. And if you get that, they can have a good personality and a good body. And maybe you're hiring them because you think, well, they can make me look like them. And that's not what's going to happen. But there's a lot of science involved. So it's 20 years of science turned psychology. And in between that, biochemistry and genetics and the endocrine system and your nervous system. So everything, it's just been a deep dive, and I keep doing it. I mean, I learn all the time. That's why I have a show, because I bring on guests that I learn from as well and continue adding that into my toolbox so that people can do a program and actually get what they wanted in the first place, which is to make true lasting change. And unfortunately, the problem with making true lasting change for most people is it does go a little deeper than most people are willing to or understand they need to. Counting calories will not work and sustain you for the rest of your life. Counting and tracking your exercise will also not continue to work. The math will stop working because your body changes, both with age as well as with lifestyle and with in response to what you're doing exercise-wise or not.
Well, it's interesting because I've worked with a personal trainer before, and there's a lot that doesn't really go into consideration when you're working with them. You know, either they're just doing the motions and taking you through whatever their little program is, and it may or may not be something that works for you.
Right, and sometimes because and this is meant from a good place, especially people who have had a transformation themselves and then decide, I want to help others do this too. So maybe it's a Weight Watchers plan, or they just got involved in a gym and in a sport and in an activity that really excited them, and because they lost weight and they got stronger and they felt better and they slept better, they want to help others feel that way. And so, but the only tools they use are the ones they understand that work for them. That's where the science comes in, because it isn't going to work for everybody. And all different parts of this, from the application of the food and the exercise and the force from the exercise on your joints and on your fitness level, to the psychology piece. That's a huge piece to this, because there's no person on the planet that doesn't understand they quote unquote would get better from eating cleaner or moving more. Nobody doesn't understand that. It's never ever because someone just doesn't know. It's what to do with that, how to do that, how to integrate it, why. Those are the questions. Why am I not doing it? Those are the questions that need to be asked to actually facilitate real change.
Yeah, I just find that whole thing interesting because I've gone through working with different things, and your book was just so fascinating because it just has so much information. And I know you talk about like how diet really is kind of like a temporary thing. We're really looking to do more of a healthy lifestyle.
Right. The idea of diet is so archaic. I mean, when I use the word diet, that to me means, what do you eat? What does your diet consist of? What do you consume? But when someone says, I'm going on a diet, it implies it's temporary. It implies restriction. It implies that it's a punishment of some kind for the behavior that I've been doing up until this point. So there's a lot of things that are really wrong and sabotaging to using that phrase, I'm going on a diet, or I'm on a diet. Well, everyone's on a diet. Everyone eats. What does your diet consist of? And from moment to moment, there are choices that we make, and the choices have consequences to them. And there are all kinds of information about food out there and different plans. And when it comes, again, that's that diet mentality of temporary, and it's not long-term, and it's not education. I have a 5-month transformation program that goes with the book, because the book was never going to be enough to just write about, here are the 5 secrets to releasing weight and ending body shame. I had to make a program that goes with the book so that you actually can follow along week by week and do every single thing in the book, because the process is you do it all, and you do it in the right order. And then you're going to understand where your blocks are. Then you're going to understand the education part of it. I had somebody who's on the transformation tell me that she's been on all kinds of programs, and the way that I explained the food piece to her made it really easy. And that was so nice to hear, because I do want to educate people so they understand the choices that they're making, because I'm not going to shame you. I'm not going to guilt trip you. I'm not your babysitter. You have to become accountable to yourself. But most of the time it's because we haven't learned anything past we think these are good foods and we think these are bad foods, versus understanding what food does to you, what it does to you individually, because everyone responds differently to certain foods. We all have certain food sensitivities that are either not uncovered or understood. So that approach from the diet mentality, again, keeps us sort of not understanding our own body's biochemistry. And I think there's nothing more empowering than being able to choose a food that you know exactly what it does to your body, what nutrients you get, what parts of your body it creates, like the lysine, which is an amino acid in your turkey, and the beta-carotene in the carrot. Make your eye. Make the retina in your eye. When you understand that, you're excited to eat turkey and carrots. I mean, provided they're organic, of course, because when you understand that corn's a pesticide, you don't want to eat it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that just kind of bypasses the whole purpose of trying to eat healthy. Then. So.
Yeah, because you think it's restriction.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've lived in California for a long period of time. I was up in the Central Valley, and I would see the crop dusters go by, and it's like, if they, went from one side of the freeway to the other as you were driving, your car could accidentally get, sprayed. And that stuff was this sticky, gross residue that took like 3 times to wash off my car. So you can imagine what it's doing to our foods.
Right. Right, and that's the other thing people don't understand about genetic modification. They think it's just crossbreeding, like making something, like taking a cauliflower and a broccoli and making broccoli flour. And that's not what it is. It's when we talk about genetically modified foods, we're talking about taking a pesticide, a chemical, and genetically modifying the corn, so that way now that pesticide is in the corn, that chemical, that poison, basically. So now we don't have to spray the corn because it's in the corn. So the corn becomes its own pesticide. And now we have serious bloating and gas and digestive issues from eating non-GMO or GMO corn because it's basically poison. And we're having a reaction to the poison because obviously it repels bugs. And so what is it doing inside of us, this poison?
I've heard it also repels animals and birds, so that can't be good either, So you look at all that. Yeah, so and I really love your approach because you do things so differently. I mean, because you look at the psychological impact someone has in regards in the relationship to food as opposed to, hey, let's just see what your weight is.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I don't really weigh people. And one of the first chapters in the book is called Divorce the Scale. We have a very dysfunctional relationship with the scale. We give our power away by waiting to see what it's going to say to decide if we're going to like ourselves or not, or to shame us. And it's just really dysfunctional. And I think it's a cycle you'll never get out of until you step away from that number meaning something that it doesn't mean. I mean, there are so many flaws about the weight on the scale and what it actually reflects. People think they lose 2 pounds and it means they lost 2 pounds of fat. You could have lost 2 pounds of water. You could have lost 2 pounds of muscle. You don't want to be losing muscle. And we do want to release some water, but we don't want to be dehydrated. So there's a fine balance there. So I don't want people getting so excited if they see the numbers go up and they go down. It's too torturous emotionally, and it's not even the real story, and it's not even true. So until you can actually accept yourself for who you are and stop shaming yourself for a number that may not even make any sense to you because you think I'm X amount of pounds of fat, like you are so much more than fat. You have muscle and bones and blood and skin and nail and hair and organs and undigested food and plasma. You have all the stuff in you that makes up that mass number. And so, yeah, the scale, like the top 3, I think, things that get in people's way are the calorie counting, the scale, and exercise tracking. It just stays top level. Those are not the motivating factors that keep you going. Those are not what inspire your choices. And too many people have a relationship, myself included, in the fitness industry, which is why I don't really like being part of the fitness industry. I've never been like, yeah, I'm a fitness professional, because I think it's very shaming. And it reinforces like self-hatred and beating yourself up for not being good enough. And that is never going to inspire you to take care of yourself from a good place.
No, not at all.
Book. No. Oh. And I mean, this is my 3rd book. My 2nd book was about that relationship, about the relationship from either love or shame and fear that you can approach self-care. And until you come over to the camp of that everything you do is because you love and respect yourself, that's when you get true change. Otherwise, you're just reinforcing this negative feeling, which is why you don't like going to the gym, which is why every time you exercise, it feels bad, because you just keep reactivating this negative belief and feeling about yourself.
Well, and what a better time than now to talk about this? I mean, because we've got the new year coming up, and, January 1st, a lot of people make New Year's resolutions, or especially going through the holidays. It's like, gosh, there's that kind of seesaw effect between eating and that inner mental game of shame,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And people know, they intuitively, when you're resisting it, like there's part of you that knows, I do somewhere in my body and brain want to feel better, want to release weight, want to like myself, want to accept myself, want to take better care of myself. The feeling comes in when it's attached, like we resist. Some people just say, no, I'm not going to do that, because they understand that it's somewhat shaming. This sort of treadmill, hamster wheel of every January or every holiday season, overeating, because I feel like it, because I want to, because I like it, because it's only one time a year, because I deserve it, because I work hard, and because it's family time. I'm going to eat whatever I want, whenever I want, and then I'll feel bad about it later. And then come January, I'll do what I do every year, and I'll decide for about a week that I'm going to do something about it, and then I'm going to stop eating all those things that I were eating before. I'm going to go out and I'm going to exercise a little bit more until that wears off, which is about mid-January to early February, and nothing's changed. And this is what happens every year.
Mm. Well, and so what are some things that our listeners should really consider? They've purchased your book, they're doing the program that you have. What are some things they should really consider when starting an exercise program?
I would really check in with your willingness and your readiness to attach it to something bigger than the number on the scale and a short-term fitting in some clothes differently. Because without that foundation and commitment and resilience to the bigger why, like why exercise? Is it because you should? Like if we can't, we need to divorce the word should too, because should implies we don't have a choice. And you always have choice. You don't have to exercise. You don't have to eat well. You can eat whatever you want. You can sit on the couch all day. That is your choice. If it's not the choice that you want, then we have to replace things like I should exercise or I should lose weight with I want to. And not stop at that. I want to exercise, or I want to exercise. Just start there. Maybe you don't want to exercise, but you want to exercise. And then, but why? Why do you want to exercise? And maybe it's because you want to live a healthier, longer, vibrant, optimal life. Maybe it's because you don't want to have injury or degeneration in your joints and pain later. Maybe it's because you want to have energy and vitality and fit into your clothes and not have to keep buying more clothes because they keep getting smaller. That you have to connect with a longer-term why. And until you can truly do that, so you can see the path, your commitment to it will only be based on what you consider willpower. And willpower never lasts. Willpower is forcing something that you really don't want to be doing. It needs to be inspired action coming from a deeper place.
I love how you put that, because that's something to get excited about, inspired action, because you can be like, hey, this is how you were talking at the beginning of our discussion here about, eating turkey and carrots and what these things do to our body, and to really kind of dive into how it helps feed us, not just at a physical level, but at a spiritual level, I think is very encouraging.
Thank you. But it's where it's again, that process of, I believe that when people start a program, they want lasting change. They don't want to waste time. They don't want to go in and repeat patterns and behaviors that they've done before because it didn't work. The difference is that people don't understand what that really means. They get stuck in the calorie counting and the exercise logging and then the willpower. And then when something happens and they get triggered or life changes or they get travel and they lose that accountability maybe on just those top-level things, then their enthusiasm wanes. Or let's say they're not getting the result that they want, and then their enthusiasm wanes. And so for me, I think that's really frustrating to watch, that you really, I believe you want change, but you don't understand the tools that are actually necessary for real change. And I don't think a lot of people know what it is. That's why they keep doing the same thing over, because the fitness industry wants you to think it's the newest, latest gadget, or it's the newest, latest class, whether it be CrossFit or it doesn't matter. Whatever new thing came out, oh, this is it. And this is what, or some new product or pill. Or, I mean, again, of course we want easy, but I also believe you can create easy. That's why I made this transformation program. It's 5 months because it's one step at a time. You didn't just decide to go to college and then the next day graduate. It took 4 to 6 to 8 years of education to graduate and have a degree. Do you think it's going to take 2 months or a week for you to understand and learn about your body and what, like your psychology? So again, I think people sign up for something they think is going to be oh so easy, and they get frustrated when it's not and give up because no one's really educated them on what's really necessary to make this kind of change. And it's a little bit more than just what you're putting in your mouth. It's a lot more than what you're putting in your mouth and what you're doing with your body.
Yeah. Well, and you look at it, too, from just, a realistic standpoint. It takes X amount of period of time to get the body into whatever shape that or misshape it's in, and then we want to get to a different place. It's going to take X amount of time to do that as well. Anything really quick or that's like, hey, you can in a week lose 30 pounds, it's not really going to be sustainable.
Correct. Now, there are food sensitivities that within 2 to 4 weeks, people can release a significant amount of weight when they replace those with different items. But usually after the first initial, let's say, water weight loss, then they sort of plateau for a little while, and then it becomes about taking the time to increase the metabolism, build the muscle, and burn the fat, versus the first initial weight loss and release is usually water weight. And some people think, oh, that's so great, and that I'll just keep losing all of that every week, and that's not how it happens. So yes, when building muscle, it takes some time. When increasing your metabolism, it takes time. Burning fat can take time, but you absolutely can lose a bunch of water weight real fast if you get rid of all the foods in your diet that your body aren't digesting well, and they have a negative reaction to.
Well, and then it lets them, once you figure that out, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm just having a reaction to this, and you pull that from your diet, then you can start working towards a better goal. Because, I've seen people where they plateau. They've done everything in the diet, and they plateau, and they're stuck. And they're like, well, nothing's happening. Nothing's working. I
think that's when, and it's too often people think they're supposed to understand how to fix it themselves. I'm here to tell you that you wouldn't have an illness and not go to the doctor. You just wouldn't. You'd be like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what to take. I don't know what to do. Okay, same thing here. You need some help. If you have not gotten it yet, you're not going to get it yet, because it's educational stuff that you may not even know you need to know or understand. That's when you hire somebody who can help you, who can see where the plateaus are happening and help you to uncover them as well as to what to do about it. Because the educational piece of this is where people get frustrated, because they just think, because somehow we have all made it sound like to lose weight, all you have to do is eat less and exercise more. And again, generally, that would be correct. Generally. But exercise, all exercise is not created equal, first of all. And if you don't understand how your metabolism works and your hormones, then when the andropause and the menopause time between ages 47 and 55, again, year and year after year, I continue hearing the same things. Why did I gain all this weight? I just got with the menopause. I eat the same. Now I'm working out more, and I've only lost a couple pounds in a couple of months. I'm really frustrated, and it's not working. Well, it's not working because you're not doing the right things. But unless you study all that stuff, which of course you're not going to because you have a job and a life and a family, well, that's when you reach out and you ask for help. You really, at this point, it's not your responsibility. You don't know because you haven't learned, and that's okay. You're not supposed to. That's why people like me exist, because we're supposed to help you.
Amen to that, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Because, it's just like, most people take their taxes to somebody who's going to do their taxes, an accountant or, what have you. And in the same kind of way, when something's going on with our bodies, we're not just going to try to figure it out on our own and go, gosh, that was a major, lose. You want to be able to get a little help and kind of move forward. Now, I know that you're in California, in the LA area. Do you see clients all over?
I do. I see clients all over through Skype. I work with people both in the phone, so it depends on what people want, because I coach on a number of different topics. I help people with sort of life purpose things as well as relationships and general sort of therapeutic talking kind of mindset and beliefs and getting them unstuck from their habits and patterns that weigh them down. But when it comes to training, I absolutely can train people over Skype, which I've been doing now since 2009. And I've got clients all over the world that I train through Skype. So it's like having me as a personal trainer, same thing, except I'm not standing next to you, but you're actually doing all the same things I would be doing with you if I was standing next to you. The only difference is I can't touch you, but I sure can see. Every time. It's funny when someone starts with me, it takes a couple of sessions for them to go, wow, you saw that? You can see that? Yes, I can see that. I see it all. So it's just, all you have to do is have your laptop or an iPad that you can have a video on and do Skype or FaceTime, and I can work with anybody.
Hey, what a great era that we live in, that we can do that, and we're not limited by distance. You know, we can work with great people regardless where they're at and where we're at. Yeah,
and it was such a hang-up for a little while because I didn't think I could do it because of the whole joint thing. You know, like I'm very biomechanic-oriented and making sure that we're doing things and movements that are not wearing your joints down faster, but preserving them, because you can take one exercise and do it in 5 different ways, and 3 of those ways are going to utilize your cartilage and wear you down, and you'll have pain in a couple of years because you'll be bone on bone. And doing it in 2 different ways will actually preserve you. So it's not just all that you're doing, let's say a lunge, it's how you're doing it. And how you do it is how it's going to affect your body in one way or the other.
What are some final tips that you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, I would like you to remember that it's a lot of information. So if you're overwhelmed, know that that's okay, and it isn't your job, and it isn't your fault. And if you didn't go to school for it, then you're not supposed to know. Just like you said, Marianne, about taking your taxes. Thank God for people doing taxes. I'm not doing my taxes. I don't need to learn that. Right. I don't need to learn how to fix my car. I don't need to learn how to fix my plumbing. I don't need to learn how to build my house. Somebody else can do that for me. And that's the beauty of being able to ask for help and being able to understand and know when you've done the same behavior over and over again, maybe it's time for a different perspective. And there are answers, because people all over the place are getting results. At the same time, people all over the place are stuck. So the question would be, and the tip I would give everyone, is to be gentle on yourself and understand that if you haven't figured it out yet, then maybe it's time to ask for some help with that, because I'm sure there are answers that you don't even know exist, things you haven't even considered that can help you.
Well, and I found, and it's such great advice, and I'm so glad that we're spending this time today, because your book, The Invisible Fitness Formula, was so inspirational and so helpful. I can see a lot of people, and I know it's, just been widely received. A lot of people are really benefiting from the information in that, and it just kind of helps them get into the right place where they're able to start moving forward, especially with the new year coming up, It's important to do it right. And for me, there is a right, and the right includes your whole being. You can't separate it. You cannot take your beliefs, your feelings, and your mind out of your food and your exercise. They are connected, whether you know it or not. And that is really good information, and that's why people need to pick up your book. They need to spend some time with you and get that shift going. So, JJ, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Well, if you go to jjflizanes.com, jjflizanes.com, and there's a section for free tools and resources, and there's all kinds of things, from a quiz about your blocks, like what's stopping you from getting results with both. There's actually 2 quizzes. There's one about weight loss resistance, and there's another one about just all of your habits and patterns in all aspects of your life that might be sabotaging your success, as well as other free tools as a checklist, and there's a 30-day manifestation group that I run that can be part of the community. So jjflizanes.com has all the links to any social media, to all those free tools and resources. That would be a great place, to videos, to the book. It's all there. The only thing I will mention, since it is the end of the year, is that I am doing a live event that also is virtual. So I should say I'm doing an event in January, and there are a certain number of limited seats in the room in Los Angeles, January 12th to the 14th. and I would love people to come be a part of the physical, real community and come with us. It's called Releasing What Weighs You Down. And that's the name of the event. You can even go to releasingwhatweighsyoudown.com to learn about the event. And if you can't make it to Los Angeles, we are doing a virtual ticket where anyone anywhere can get all the sessions after the event is over. It's not live streaming, but you can purchase the virtual ticket and then be able to walk yourself through all the sessions and all the same information to get the great results that we're going to be producing at Releasing What Weighs You Down.
Oh, JJ, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
I appreciate you having me, and I hope that people feel inspired, that they know somewhere that there's hope and there are results waiting for them in their future.
Well, I have joined your community. I highly suggest everyone does as well. You've got some great information there, and of course, want people to pick up the book, The Invisible Fitness Formula. We are going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
Do you know that you can become a genius at any age? Do you know that you can change your life and create a brilliant life for yourself? Hi, I am Olympia LaPointe, an award-winning rocket scientist who you more than likely have seen on TED Talks, Impact Theory, and PBS. Check out my latest book, Answers Unleashed, The Science of Unleashing Your Brain's Power. Simply go to AnswersUnleashed.com books and check it out for yourself. You'll find the tools to help you create the life you've always wanted.
The highly acclaimed and newly released book, The Hand Part 2 by Lynn Van Praagh Grattan, describes the journey between a psychic medium and a family who lost a son. Messages from Beyond Eternity's Gate is of love and healing. For more information, visit www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com. That's www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. My gosh, we just had such a great time with JJ, and now our next guest, Sandra Marinella, is here today to talk to us about her new book, The Story You Need to Tell. Now, Sandra is an award-winning teacher and author from Arizona, and for 30 years, she has immersed herself in teaching writing to students and educators. When she was faced with and survived breast cancer, she turned to her personal writing as a way to heal and change. And when she began volunteering with veterans and cancer patients, she noticed that storytelling and writing helped them transform their lives. So let's welcome to the show, Sandra.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, Marianne.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, Sandra. And gosh, what an inspirational book. My goodness. Once I picked it up, I couldn't put it down.
That's good to hear.
Well, and so, everything has a beginning. And so let's talk about yours. What started you on this path of writing?
Oh, my goodness. I think my father gave me a journal when I was 9 years old, and I found it intriguing that I could go hide and write and tell the stories I wanted to tell. And I became a writer and then a writing teacher as a result. So I spent most of my life in classrooms watching the power of writing. And this, when I had cancer in 2012, I had time to pull back and realize that writing was a powerful healing tool in our lives, and that I could probably share that with others in a great way if I would write a book. And so I chose to do that.
So you talk about writing your story as part of a really powerful healing tool. How is that?
Oh, I think that we all have stories. I'm fascinated by story. I think story is how we define ourselves. It's who we are. It's who we can become, and we can change those stories. And it's certainly writing. I was teaching in a high school classroom for many years and then a college classroom, and over again I would watch my students turn in narratives or personal stories that would show me that they were using writing in a transformational way. For example, I think I tell the story in the book of a young man, a student named Ben, whose uncle had committed suicide, and he couldn't tell anybody, he couldn't talk about it, but slowly in his classroom journal he began to make notes about it and then admit that this had happened, and he wrote a classroom narrative that he read to the other students, and they were blown away, and they saw him in a new light. They accepted him. They reached out to him. They supported him, and this painful story, by releasing this painful story, I watched him begin to embrace others again, begin to rejoin the human community of the classroom, and begin to walk forward. So that power of seeing that over and over again in my classroom made it clear to me that writing can be very much not just a healing tool, but a transformational tool in our lives.
So let's say someone wants to start using writing as a healing tool for themselves. What are some ways that they can start, preparing for it, or how do they even get started?
Well, I always teach in my workshops, and certainly in the book I lay out the pattern of how important it is to develop your own writing pattern and practice. And it's not easy to do because our lives are so very, very busy. But I think if you can just make a little bit of time, maybe 5 minutes at lunch or 5 minutes in the morning as part of your ritual, or maybe late in the evening if you're a late-night writer. And you don't even have to do it every day. To be honest, my own writing pattern is not, I do write every day, but I don't go to my personal writing or my journal every day to try to pull up my stories and to try to bring out my truth. But I think, it really is an individual practice, and it's important to do. It's important to understand that when you have a painful story, it may not want to come out for a long time, that you may need to be patient and give it time to settle in your mind, and your mind to get itself adjusted to this change in your life or this difficult story. And then later, when it feels like coming out, when you feel like you have the flow, don't stop it. Bring it out. Break your silence and share your story with the world.
And just kind of let that all, kind of flow from you and let it happen. And I guess for a lot of people, when they're telling stories that really affect them, they're writing it down, it's kind of a way of transference.
Yes, I think without a doubt that's true. I think difficult experiences, it takes time for them to come through to us in our emotions, but once we begin to release them from the emotional side of our right brain and transfer them over to our left brain, we can begin to accept them and make sense of them and release them, and there is definitely a catharsis that happens. There's a release that is wonderful. And much later then, there's even, if you actually write it, and it can be very painful to write about these difficult things, but once you have written it, the beauty of the writing is the reflection, that you can look back at the story as it's a mirror and you can see it. And then you own the story. You have the opportunity with our amazing mind to make changes in the way you live with that story.
Well, I love in your book it talked about, you can write your story from the past, but you can change it. So it's not like it's all set in stone.
No. The work that I did with veterans and cancer patients really taught me that, they had these horrible stories in their minds, and they would be, for example, I worked with one veteran who had been physically abused when she was overseas and had not told anybody, and she had held that story in her mind for so long and held it back and refused to give it out to the world. And then slowly, as she began to write poems about it and let go of it, yes, she began to see herself in a different light. She was no longer this horrible person. It wasn't her fault that this had happened. And she began to rewrite the story and understand that she was a very beautiful person, and that she could choose how she now saw her life going forward. And she did exactly that. She became a powerful poet. I actually hope she's going to be publishing a book of her poems about this transition before long.
Well, and a lot of times I think when people start writing, they think, well, maybe I have to publish this. Maybe that's why I won't start, or I'm not sure I want to share it with other people.
Oh, that's such a good point, Marianne. It's very much the writing process, and the reason I wrote the story you need to tell is because it is the process that is transformational. And actually, when I started writing this book, I had cancer, and I said to myself, I'm going to use this writing to help those cancer patients that I'm working with. I really had no idea if I would publish this book, and that became unimportant in the process because it was so transformational to find the stories, to share the stories, to interview others and hear their inspiring stories. And very few of the writers, I interviewed over 100 writers, very few of them were published, and most of them talked nonstop about how wonderful it is to write because, and how afraid of writing they might have been in the beginning and afraid of the pain that it might cause, because it does do that. Difficult stories do cause us to have pain and to have a tough time getting them out. But the process of getting them out is so fulfilling and rewarding and life-changing. I can't think of a single writer that I interviewed, maybe one who was still in the throes of her trauma, I think, that I think all the rest of them really felt that the process really was what mattered and had released them and helped them move forward with their lives. Very little focus on publication, and I think that's important. I mean, publication may come. If you write something that's powerful, it can come, but it doesn't have to come.
Yeah. And for some people, that can be kind of a scary thing when you're just trying to move forward.
Right. The whole idea of moving forward is a challenge when you're faced with a difficult situation, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you interviewed over 100 people for this book. So how did the selection process go? Because I'm sure you probably had so many fabulous stories. How did that selection process go for the ones that were selected for this book?
I really believe in the power as a writer of intuition. And when I was recovering from my breast cancer surgery, I reread my 27 old journals. And I think in rereading them, the insight was just so powerful that I had so many stories. And I had worked with so many writers through the ages. One of the writers that had inspired me when I was a young and new teacher was Christina Baldwin, and she had written several books on the power of journal writing. So I immediately wrote to her and asked if I could work with her and interview her, and she was a very important part of my development process of this book. And then I started working with cancer patients because I was one, and I saw that I could take the power of writing to heal to my breast support groups and to individuals I had met in oncology wards and in radiation rooms. So I started working with breast cancer groups, and then my husband is a disabled veteran, so I started working with a PTSD group downtown in Phoenix at the hospital of veterans who were struggling with a lot of different issues. And so in my work, all these stories just were generated all the time through their writing, through our discussions. And then I chose to work independently with several people who needed to really pull hard stories out. And so many of those interviews became the ones that I included in the book. It was just such a rewarding and wonderful process.
It must have been really hard because I've talked to people who have had personal trauma that they're either going through or have been through, and veterans as well. And sometimes the stories just touch your heart so much. I mean, it's hard to not sit there and listen and just, cry because it's so moving.
Oh, I think that's very true. I think, yes, I especially am thinking of some of the veterans who had gone to Iraq and fought the war over there for us in firefights. And one young man, Goldie Goldston, when I interviewed him several times, I met with him up at Luke Air Force Base and interviewed him. And he would tell me how he would write in his journal at night when he was out there, and that he had to, because in going to war, it was difficult. He watched one friend step on an IED and lose his limbs. He watched another friend in a firefight one day, standing right by him, was shot in the head, and he lost him. And he said the pain was just so incredible and so difficult that, to just scream and yell a little bit in a journal helped. And it is very difficult to go through those stories. But I do want to make a point here, and that is that if you have the courage to walk into these difficult stories, if you're ready, you shouldn't go there if you're not, but when you are ready, if you have the courage to release these stories and write about them, the rewards on the other side are just phenomenal, life-changing. And it's worth that hard journey to transform or change your life and help you have a new light you can shine on the story to make sense of it and to do something better with that painful story.
Now, are there times that you would not suggest that people write about their story?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think when one is initially traumatized by an event, I think it's important not to write immediately after a trauma. If you've just been in a car wreck or you've just witnessed a murder, I think you absolutely should not write. I give an example of that in a book. I had a student that was killed when he went to follow a person who had stolen a television from the Walmart where he worked, and he was shot in the head and killed. We came back to the high school the next day, and the students were just traumatized, and there's no way I would have them pull out their journals and say, okay, let's write about this death. Absolutely not. Instead, we played soft music. We talked quietly. We need time when we're traumatized to put our emotions around what has happened. And it's painful. We're going to experience painful emotions. So we need that time for our brain to make an adjustment to what has happened. We had a memorial service at the high school a week, I think, after the death of the boy. And a few days after that, I think we were actually able to go back into the classroom and start actually addressing what had happened to the student. And it was a painful process. I want to add here, I keep thinking of Elie Wiesel as I'm talking to you, because he said after his years in the concentration camps of World War II that he could not and would not write about his experiences for 10 years. And it was 1960 before he published his great book, Night, that helped us all understand what really had happened behind the walls of the concentration camps. So I truly, yes, I think it's important that we understand that emotions take time to be processed, and writing is really about taking emotions and transferring things into a logical place in our minds. So we're not necessarily immediately ready for it. Some people are. I don't want to deny that there are some people that write so much they can write right away. But for the most part, we need to be cautious.
I think it's interesting. For some people, it's like they write to get it out because that's a way of processing things. And for other people, they need the time to kind of work through that. Everyone comes to their own conclusion on what works for them.
They do. Yes, again, I think a writing process and pattern are truly unique. and one needs to find theirs and then live it, because once you have it, it's such a great gift to know how to process your stories and your emotions.
What were some of the surprising things you learned on this journey in creating this book?
There were so many things. That's such a great question, and I thank you for asking it.
Sure.
I think first and foremost, I was a bit shocked when I worked with the veterans, and I guess I should have known this, but I was a bit shocked at how they could be at war and how they were constantly told not to experience their emotions, to buck up and to be tough and to be strong. And then when I was working with them, I was just, well, how can we question why there's such a huge number of veterans who experience PTSD? I mean, they're asked to hold these impossible situations inside and not deal with them for a long period of time. So I was shocked at that, and I thought, wow, we really need to work on making sure all veterans start taking journals into warfare.
Mm-hmm.
I was really surprised at that. That was one of the many surprises.
Was there something, like equally kind of like an aha moment that you learned from the cancer patients you worked with?
Oh, yeah, yes, actually. I think the biggest takeaway, the most rewarding takeaway, is finding that you can actually have stage 4 cancer, metastatic cancer. You can be dying, and you can psychologically be healed. You can step into the middle of this huge, terrible storm that you were living through of chemo or radiation or whatever your treatment is, and it is possible. Some of these patients that I worked with definitely used many things, their family, prayer, and their writing, to pull themselves into the center of the storm and to live in the moment and to just joyfully be with the people they love and do the things they loved to do. That was such a beautiful finding for me, that even in the midst of tragedy or an impossible situation, we as human beings have the power to step into the center of the hurricane, as you will, and be in the eye of the storm and find the peace in that moment.
Well, and I'm sure, because you've helped a lot of people write their stories, have you come across in your journey, people have said, gosh, I'm not a writer, I don't even know where to start. I mean, how would you help somebody with that?
Oh, that's my favorite thing. Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I wrote the book for that because I think so many of my former students have always said to me, I really want to write a book. I really, really don't, but I just don't know what to write or have a story. And so many of them say, I'm not a writer, but I think if you find your story, you are a writer. And I did write the story you need to tell. I just packed it with prompts because I had watched for 30 years in my classrooms what prompts make people excited and make them take off and make them write. And I always work first to make them comfortable with the notion that it's truly telling your story can be telling your story, if you want to start that way, sharing your story with others, taping your stories. I work with one doctor who really wants to tell his stories, and he's not much of a writer, so he actually tapes his stories and shares them that way, and then they are typed out and given to people as a result. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. I've had the same experience with an MS patient who had never been a writer. He was a psychology professor at a nearby university, and he'd never been a writer, but he had all these powerful experiences that as he now is home and facing the end of life, he's wanting to share. And he, too, is taping them, and he has a dear friend who is typing them up for him. So there's a lot of different ways of finding and sharing and giving your story out.
I think it's so great that you help people on their journey with this, because it's so difficult sometimes, especially if you're like, gosh, I know I want to get this out and write about this, and I have a story to tell, but, like one of the common things I hear people talk about is, my story's not that interesting or that unique. Oh, and you probably hear that a lot too, right?
I just tell people to go to their phone or go to those old boxes of photos you have at home and start digging through, or sit around the kitchen table with your family and start telling the old family stories that come out. It's amazing what you will hear and what you will discover. And it's, again, there's so many paths. One of my favorite exercises is draw a map of your childhood home. Because when you do this, you start telling all these stories that you've forgotten are there, but they're there. Our minds are really amazing. You have those stories there. They're still there to be shared.
And even sometimes when we think we don't have them, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely, Marianne.
Well, and so let's say they're saying, hey, I've picked up your book, the story you need to tell, so I've got that. How can, if someone wants to become a little bit more immersed in storytelling with you, how do they do that?
Well, I do workshops, and I have a website, www.storyyouTell.com. I work a lot with the hospitals in the Phoenix area, and I do national conferences. And they can certainly sign up for my newsletter at my website, and I will keep them posted on any of the events that are in different cities, but mostly in the Phoenix area. But I am trying to stretch that out, reach out all over the place, because this is important work. I think it's important for all of us to find our way and find our stories. I think they define us, and they help us know who we are, and they help us grow. And the fact that we can rewrite them, that means they can help us change and transform. I love that.
I love that too. Well, and you talked about that you do these, you work with hospitals a lot. What does that look like?
Once a month I go to Mayo and I do open to the public workshops up at Mayo. A lot of cancer patients attend, but I love Mayo Clinic because they are an equal opportunity place. I mean, they're doctors, they're social workers, they're nurses. The audience I have is mixed, and that's wonderful because when you have people from across all different fields, patients as well as healthcare providers, you realize, what the other person is dealing with. You learn a very important skill in the story you need to tell. You learn to shift your perspective and understand life from somebody else's perspective.
I think it's so great that the medical industry is more interested now than they've ever been in these type of things. The doctors want to know how this will impact their patients and maybe even tell their own story.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting because one of the I attended a men's book club last week, and several of the men were doctors, and one of them was telling the story of the death of a friend some time ago that he had never talked about, and he said it's so important and so difficult for us as healthcare providers or as men in this culture to share our stories or to release our stories. And I thought that was profound because I think this work is very important for men. I think they are underserved in terms of understanding the power of releasing their stories, their personal stories.
Yeah, they're expected to kind of, even in today's standards, some of them are expected to kind of bottle that up, which, we're not asking them to do that. They don't have to do that.
Oh, yeah, and you're right. I think it's changed quite a bit. The younger generation, I think, has embraced it. But it was clear to me when I worked with these men in the book club, wow, we have a long way to go. Here are very bright, very civic-minded men who are making a positive difference already, who are saying they still feel obligated not to be too open or to tell their stories too readily.
Yeah. Well, and I know on your website, you were talking about different workshops that you have and stuff like that. I know you have one coming up in January where it's Writing to Grow, Change, and Create. And so people can come out and attend that workshop. Is it a one-day workshop or does it usually last a couple days?
Oh, those are at my favorite bookstore, right around the corner from my house. And they are on, they're 2-hour Monday workshops, 2 Mondays in a row. And then after that, shortly after that, I'll be starting an 8-week workshop for folks, and that will be on the website too. So I'll keep it all posted. Yeah, I hope you can come.
Keep us up. Oh, I wish.
That would be great.
I might have to mail you my story.
And that would be okay. That would be okay. I'd be thrilled.
Oh, you're so sweet. I can tell you're definitely the right person to bring this message out. My goodness. I mean, what an inspiration. And, Sandra, thank you so much for spending the time with us today and sharing your book, The Story You Need to Tell. I mean, I think everyone needs to go and pick up their own copy. It's a great book.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I've completely enjoyed talking with you. You ask great questions.
Well, thank you, Sandra. It's been such a joy to have you here. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.